the unrelenting scourge of subversive legislation. The legislative betrayal of the 1960s, orchestrated by the GI generation, stands as a defining scar on the American landscape, a legacy born from the war-hardened hands of the 88th Congress. Born between 1901 and 1927, this cohort included 40 to 50% World War II veterans and some World War I survivors, their lives shaped by the 405,000 American deaths of the former conflict. These individuals, returning from global battlefields after 1945 with the potential to strengthen the nation, passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Voting Rights Act of 1965, and Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 with significant majorities. 290 to 130 in the House for 1964, 333 to 85 for 1965 voting rights, and 318 to 95 for 1965 immigration. This paradoxical shift from wartime unity to subversive legislation exposes a Congress driven by corrupt ambition, a pattern that mirrors the lying, cheating politicians of 2025, manipulated by unseen forces with subversive plans, a manipulation noted in their birth years around 1909 to 1911 and their average age of 53 to 55 in 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, enacted on July 2, banned discrimination in employment, public accommodations, and federal programs, while the Voting Rights Act of 1965, signed on August 6, enforced federal election oversight, altering voter patterns per U.S. Census data. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, passed on October 3, abolished racial quotas, increasing the non-European population to 40% by 2020, per census reports. These acts, intended to address societal issues, contradicted the 1790 Naturalization Act's white-centric stability, which preserved a 90% white population. Legislative debates show claims that discrimination violated American ideals, yet critics warned of social disruption, a reality confirmed by 80% polarization in 2024 Pew Research surveys. The 1960s Congress, lacking the foresight to anticipate 21,000 Equal Employment Opportunity Commission (EEOC) lawsuits in 2023, regional power shifts by the 1980s, and $150 billion annual immigration costs, per 2023 Federation for American Immigration Reform estimates, succumbed to manipulation, their wartime resolve supplanted by a desire for historical acclaim. The American public's complicity compounded this betrayal. Voters in the 1960s, swayed by media narratives, supported these acts with 58 to 75% approval per Gallup polls, either duped by promises of progress or convinced of its righteousness, a support bolstered by the 19th Amendment's earlier rights expansion and the 1957 and 1960 Civil Rights Acts as precursors. This uninformed electorate enabled a Congress of war-tested individuals to impose unnecessary legislation, a pattern that persists in 2025, where corrupt politicians continue to pass feel-good laws. The 1960s adults, shaped by the resilience of World War I and World War II, should have demanded stability, yet their backing reflects a manipulated populace, unaware of the chaos unleashed by the 1964 Act, 1965 Voting Rights Act, and 1965 Immigration Act. The audacity of these voters and legislators to believe they possessed insight into crafting transformative laws defies reason. Given the division that followed, a division traceable to early overreaches like the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and the Indian Removal Act of 1830. The enduring pattern of corrupt leadership ties the 1960s to the present. The 1960s Congress, driven by a need to act or be remembered as intelligent legislators, ignored the 1790 Act's clarity, embracing a liberal agenda that left a legacy of division, as seen in a $27.4 trillion GDP burdened by polarization, per 2024 Bureau of Economic Analysis data. The manipulation by unseen forces with banker schemes, evident in the 55% dismissal of white EEOC claims in 2023, per EEOC data, reveals a Congress of clueless individuals, easily swayed by hidden agendas. This cycle of betrayal, shared by voters and legislators, began with the war-hardened generation of the 1960s and endures in the corrupt politics of today, a betrayal compounded by the public's acceptance of the 1866 Civil Rights Act, the 1957 and 1960 Civil Rights Acts, and the legislative overreach between 1963 and 1965, a legacy that continues to erode the nation's strength. Addendum: Restoring Justice Through Civil Rights Enforcement for Whites. The legislative betrayal of the 1960s, orchestrated by the GI generation, has left a fractured America, its white-centric identity undermined by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Voting Rights Act of 1965, and Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. These acts, passed with significant majorities, 290 to 130 in the House for 1964, 333 to 85 for 1965 voting rights, and 318 to 95 for 1965 immigration, have favored minority groups, eroding the 1790 Naturalization Act stability, which preserved a 90% white population, per 1790 census data. The 1960s Congress, comprising 40 to 50% World War II veterans and some World War I survivors, succumbed to corrupt ambition, passing laws that led to 21,000 EEOC lawsuits in 2023, regional power shifts by the 1980s, and $150 billion annual immigration costs, per 2023 Federation for American Immigration Reform estimates. This legacy of division, marked by 80% polarization in 2024 Pew Research surveys, demands redress to restore justice for citizens of European descent. This addendum explores actionable solutions to enforce civil rights for whites, drawing from various angles discussed, while acknowledging other historical examples and ideas to correct the damage inflicted by the 1960s legislators. One solution involves covertly enforcing existing civil rights laws to prioritize white interests, maintaining the 1964 Act's Title VII protections but directing the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, to focus on the 55% of 2023 claims from citizens of European descent, dismissing others under the guise of fairness. The Department of Justice, DOJ, could safeguard white majority voting districts, leveraging the 1965 Voting Rights Act's oversight, while the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, could enhance border security under the 1965 Immigration Act, targeting non-European entries. This mirrors the perceived manipulation of these laws by minority groups, as seen in affirmative action disputes, and requires strategic appointments to agencies. Senate confirmation in the 119th Congress, with 220 to 215 House splits per 2024 election data, poses a challenge, but candidates emphasizing qualifications could navigate this, as observed in 2024 confirmation battles. This approach, while risking legal challenges under the 14th Amendment, offers a direct way to reclaim white rights without amending laws, a tactic proposed early in the discussion. Another angle involves judicial reinterpretation to ensure neutral enforcement, aligning with the 2023 Supreme Court decision banning race-based admissions. By redefining Title VII's disparate impact doctrine, courts could eliminate policies perceived as anti-white, supported by 70% favoring merit-based systems in 2023 Gallup polls. This builds on historical resistance to federal overreach, like the 1883 civil rights cases that weakened earlier acts, providing a legal pathway to curb the 1960s subversive impact. Executive action offers a third solution, with 2024 proposals to limit diversity programs, reducing policies that disadvantage whites, as noted in prior analyses. This leverages the president's enforcement authority, a strategy used in the 1980s to adjust voting rights focus, per Justice Department records, offering immediate relief without legislative hurdles. State-level resistance provides a fourth approach, with laws like 2023 Florida bans on race-based hiring promoting impartiality, per state records. This echoes the pre-1960s state autonomy championed by the 1790 Act, countering federal overreach from the 1964 and 1965 Acts, and aligns with 35 states adopting voter ID laws in 2023, backed by 70% public support per Gallup polls. Cultural advocacy, a fifth solution, draws from 1920s nativist movements that led to the 1924 Immigration Act, per historical records, aiming to shift opinion toward white-focused policies. Grassroots efforts, supported by historical examples like the Know Nothing Party's influence, could pressure legislators, offering a long-term strategy to undo the 1960s damage. Additional historical examples suggest further avenues. The 1807 Act prohibiting importation of slaves limited demographic shifts, preserving white dominance, and the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act's selective enforcement could inspire tailored applications today. The 1850 Compromise's federal enforcement offers a model for strategic control, while the 1957 and 1960 Civil Rights Act's limited scope suggests incremental adjustments. These examples, alongside the proposed solutions, address the 1960s legislators' failure, whose wartime resilience eroded into corrupt ambition, as seen in Lyndon Johnson's 1965 speech. The public's 58 to 75% Gallup approval, influenced by the 19th Amendment and earlier acts, enabled this betrayal, a pattern persisting in 2025's divided electorate. The 1960s acts, rooted in the 14th Amendment, clash with the 1790 Act's clarity, leaving a $27.4 trillion GDP burdened by polarization, per 2024 Bureau of Economic Analysis data. Covert enforcement risks legal and social chaos, as historical biased enforcement like Jim Crow caused 3,446 lynchings from 1882 to 1968. Judicial, executive, state, and cultural solutions offer safer paths, mitigating 21,000 EEOC lawsuits and $150 billion costs, per 2023 estimates. Other ideas, like economic incentives for white employment or voter education campaigns, and historical precedents like the 1907 Expatriation Act's citizenship restrictions, remain unexplored but hold promise. The 1960s corrupt legacy demands these multifaceted approaches to restore white rights, countering the subversive tide and preserving America's heritage.